The alien ship hung in space like a giant frozen star. It had been there for 300 years, never moving, never making a sound. Every person on Earth knew about it. Children drew pictures of it in school. Scientists spent their whole lives trying to understand it, but the ship stayed silent. Commander Jake Morrison looked at the strange vessel through the window of his spaceship. He had been staring at it for hours now. The alien craft was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Parts of it looked like crystal, clear and bright. Other parts were made of metal that seemed to change color when he looked away and then looked back again. "Still nothing," said Lieutenant Amy Patterson. She sat at her computer station, trying to send messages to the alien ship. She had been doing this all day. "I've tried every language we know. I've tried math. I've tried music. Nothing works." Jake nodded slowly. He had expected this. The ship had appeared in the year 2087, back when humans were just starting to explore beyond Earth. It came quietly and took a position near Neptune. Then it just waited. No weapons, no attacks, no messages. Just waiting. "Keep trying anyway," Jake told Amy. He knew it probably wouldn't help, but they had to try something. Dr. Lisa Grant walked over to stand next to Jake. She was a scientist who studied alien life, even though humans had never found any real aliens before this ship arrived. Her face looked worried in the reflection on the window glass. "Do you think anyone is still alive in there?" she asked quietly. "After 300 years? Jake thought about this. The ship keeps itself in position. It doesn't drift away. Something must be running the systems. Maybe computers, maybe something else. Or someone else," Lisa whispered. That night, when most of the crew was sleeping, Jake went back to the window. He couldn't stop thinking about the alien ship. Everyone called it the Sentinel, like it was a guard watching over something. But what was it guarding, and why had it come to Earth's solar system? The ship had lights on its surface that blinked in patterns. Scientists had studied these patterns for hundreds of years. Some people thought the lights were a message. Others thought they were a warning to stay away. But Jake had his own idea. To him, the lights looked like breathing, like the ship was alive and sleeping, waiting for something to wake it up. His tablet computer made a soft sound. A message had arrived from Earth. It took time for messages to travel this far in space. The message was from Admiral Peterson, the man in charge of all space missions. "Morrison, you have permission to touch the alien ship if talking doesn't work. Be very careful. The President wants answers after 300 years of waiting." Jake's hand shook a little as he put down the tablet. For 3 centuries, humans had stayed away from the Sentinel. They had watched it and studied it from far away. Now finally someone was going to knock on the door. The next morning, Jake called a meeting with his senior crew members. Amy looked nervous. Lisa looked excited. Lieutenant Chris Baker, who ran all their equipment, just looked ready for anything. "We're going to fly a small shuttle over to the Sentinel," Jake explained. "Just 3 of us. Me, Lisa, and Chris will try to find a way inside." "What if it's dangerous?" Amy asked. "What if the ship has been waiting all this time to hurt us?" "Then we'll find out," Jake said simply. "But I don't think that's why it's here. If the aliens wanted to hurt Earth, they could have done it 300 years ago. They had the technology to cross space and find us. They could have attacked then. Instead, they just parked their ship and waited." "Waited for what?" Chris asked. "That's what we need to find out," Jake replied. The crew spent the rest of the day getting ready. They prepared a small shuttle, loaded it with supplies and equipment. They put on special suits in case the air inside the alien ship was dangerous. They checked every system 3 times. Jake tried to sleep that night but couldn't. His mind kept showing him pictures of what might be inside the Sentinel. Would there be aliens alive or dead? Would there be weapons? Would there be answers to the mystery that had puzzled humanity for so long? He thought about all the people who had studied this ship before him. Generations of scientists had spent their lives trying to understand it. People had written books about it. Some people even started religions based on it, believing the ship was sent by a higher power. But Jake didn't think it was anything magical. He thought it was just a ship, built by real beings sent here for a real reason, and tomorrow, he would finally find out what that reason was. Early the next morning, Jake stood in the shuttle bay with Lisa and Chris. The rest of the crew watched as they climbed into the small shuttlecraft. Amy gave Jake a worried look through the window. "Be safe," she said over the radio. "Always am," Jake replied, trying to sound more confident than he felt. The shuttle doors opened to space. Jake fired the engines and the little craft moved away from their main ship. The Sentinel grew larger and larger in front of them. Up close, it was even more impressive. It must have been a mile long, maybe more. The crystal parts caught the light from the distant sun and made rainbows across its surface. "I'm not reading any weapons," Chris said, watching his instruments. "No targeting systems. It's like the ship doesn't even see us." "It sees us," Lisa said softly. "Look at the lights." She was right. The blinking patterns on the ship's surface had changed. They were faster now, brighter. If the ship had been breathing slowly before, now it was breathing faster. Like it was excited or afraid. "Horizon, we see changes in the alien vessel," Jake said into his radio, talking to their main ship. "We're going to keep moving closer." "Be careful, Commander," Amy's voice came back. "We're watching everything from here." Jake flew the shuttle in a slow circle around the Sentinel. He was looking for a door, a hatch, any way to get inside, but the ship's surface looked smooth. There were no obvious openings anywhere. "Wait," Lisa said, pointing. "That section there on the bottom. The crystal parts look different." Jake turned the shuttle toward where she was pointing. As they got closer, something amazing happened. The crystal sections began to move. They folded back like flower petals opening in the morning. Behind them was smooth metal with a round dent in it, exactly the right size for their shuttle to fit. "That's an invitation," Chris said, his voice full of wonder. Jake carefully moved the shuttle into the opening. Clamps grabbed hold of their craft automatically, locking them in place. The alien ship had been designed for this exact moment. "Horizon, we have docked," Jake reported. His heart was beating fast. The Sentinel opened a door for us. "We're going inside." The three of them put on their helmets and checked their air supplies one more time. Lisa looked at her scanner and her eyes went wide. "There's air on the other side of this door," she said. "Real air that we could breathe. The mix is almost exactly like Earth. Even the temperature is comfortable. It's like someone made this ready for humans. Or they knew humans were coming," Jake said quietly. He opened the shuttle door. A hallway stretched in front of them, but it wasn't like any hallway Jake had ever seen. Instead of cold metal walls, he saw something that looked like a garden. Tall structures rose from the floor, made of light and crystal. They almost looked like trees. A path made of smooth stone led deeper into the ship. "This is incredible," Lisa whispered. She took off her helmet and breathed in. "The air is perfect. Not stale at all. These systems have been running for 300 years without anyone maintaining them." Chris waved his scanner around. "I'm picking up active power sources everywhere. Computing systems, environmental controls, everything. The ship is completely operational. It's just been waiting." "Then where's the crew?" Amy's voice came through their radios from the main ship far away. "Where are the aliens who built this?" "That's what we're here to find out," Jake replied. They walked down the path slowly. Every step felt important, like they were walking through history. The ship seemed to know they were there. Lights turned on ahead of them and turned off behind them, like the ship was guiding them somewhere specific. After walking for about 10 minutes, they entered a large round room. In the center stood a tall pedestal, and above the pedestal floated a hologram. It showed a map of stars with Earth's sun in the middle. A single blinking light showed a path leading away from Earth and out into deep space. "That's a ship's course," Jake said, moving closer. "Someone left Earth and flew out into the galaxy." The hologram changed. Now it showed a person in an old-fashioned spacesuit, the kind that humans wore 300 years ago. There was a date in the corner that made Jake stop breathing. September 15th, 2087. The day before the Sentinel first appeared near Earth. "Play it," Jake said. His voice shaking, the hologram grew bigger. Inside the helmet, they could see a woman's face. She had short brown hair and tired eyes, but her expression was determined. She looked like someone who had made a difficult choice and was standing by it. "My name is Commander Helen Price," the woman said. "If you're watching this, it means humanity found the Sentinel. It means someone was brave enough to come aboard. I'm glad. I hoped this day would come." Lisa gasped and grabbed Jake's arm. Helen Price. She commanded the Genesis mission. It was the first human ship to go beyond Neptune. The ship disappeared and was never found. Helen's voice continued. 3 months ago, my crew encountered something amazing. A ship unlike anything humans have ever built. Inside were aliens. They called themselves the Vari. They were travelers like us, but they were dying. The hologram changed to show the aliens. They were tall and thin with 4 arms. Their skin looked like oil on water, shimmering with different colors. They had large eyes that seemed kind, even though their faces were very different from human faces. The Vari had been traveling through space for 1,000 years, Helen explained. Their home planet was destroyed. They were looking for a new world to live on, but their ship was breaking down. Only a few of them were left alive. The hologram showed Helen working with the aliens. They ate meals together. They laughed together, even though they couldn't understand each other's languages at first. They taught me so many things, Helen said, and Jake could hear the love in her voice. About the universe, about life on other worlds. They showed me wonders that humans won't discover for centuries. But more important than knowledge, they became my friends, especially one of them. His name was Kellen. The hologram focused on one of the Vari. He had special markings on his upper arms. When he stood near Helen, his posture seemed gentle and protective. Kellen and I spent hours trying to talk to each other, Helen continued. Finally, they used their technology to help us understand each other's thoughts and feelings. That's when I learned about the Vari tradition called the remembering. When someone from another species shows them kindness, they remember forever. They wait for that person or their family to come back. Jake watched as the hologram showed Helen looking older and more tired. Her face had new lines of stress. The Vari couldn't stay near Earth, Helen said. Their ship was dying too fast. They had one chance to reach a star system where they might survive. It was 50 light-years away. With the fuel they had left, they could barely make it there. Tears appeared in Helen's eyes in the recording. They asked me to go with them. Kellen asked me personally. They had technology that could help me live long enough to survive the journey. I could have seen things no human will see for hundreds of years. I could have walked on an alien world. Jake leaned forward. He needed to know what she had chosen. But I said no, Helen continued, and tears ran down her face now, because I couldn't abandon humanity. We were just starting to explore space. We were just learning that we weren't alone in the universe. I had to come back. I had to tell people what I had learned. The hologram showed a goodbye scene. Helen hugged Kellen, and the alien's forearms wrapped around her gently. They held each other for a long time. Before the Vari left, Kellen gave me this ship, Helen explained. The Sentinel was their backup vessel. It was completely functional, completely automated. Kellen programmed it to come to Earth's solar system and wait. Wait for me to return, or for anyone from Earth who was brave enough to look for answers. Helen's face became hard with determination, but the tears kept flowing. I'm not coming back. By the time you watch this, I'll be dead. The Genesis was hit by asteroids 2 days ago. Our life support is failing. I have maybe 12 hours left. But I'm spending those hours recording this message. I'm downloading everything the Vari taught me into the Sentinel's computer core. All their knowledge, all their technology, all their history. The hologram showed information flowing like rivers of light into crystal storage banks. The Sentinel has waited for 300 years because Kellen programmed it to remember me, Helen said. To remember one human who showed his people kindness when they needed it most. Now the ship is yours. Everything in it is yours. This is the Vari's gift to humanity, given through me. Helen smiled through her tears. Tell them I kept my promise if you ever find them. Tell them humanity deserved their faith. And tell Kellen, wherever he is in the universe, that I never forgot him either. Not for one moment. The recording ended. The room became silent except for the quiet hum of the ship's systems. Jake realized his face was wet with tears. He hadn't even noticed he was crying. 300 years, Chris said softly. An alien fell in love with a human. She chose to stay with humanity. And he waited 300 years because he loved her. Not just love, Lisa said, wiping her own eyes. Hope. The Vari hoped humanity would be worthy of their gift. Helen hoped we would find this ship and use the knowledge wisely. 300 years of hope, kept alive by a computer program and a promise. Jake stepped up to the pedestal. The hologram had changed to a simple message in English. Just 2 words, welcome home. The next 3 weeks felt like a dream. Jake's crew worked day and night to understand the Sentinel's systems. Every day they discovered something new. The ship's computers held more information than all the libraries on Earth combined. Jake spent most of his time in the memory room, the place where Helen's recording played. He watched it over and over again. Each time he saw something new in her face, heard something different in her voice. This woman had given up everything for humanity, and hardly anyone on Earth knew her name. You need to rest, Amy told him one evening. She had come over from their main ship with reports. You've been here for 16 hours straight. Did you watch the recording? Jake asked, not looking away from the hologram. 5 times, Amy admitted, sitting down beside him. I keep thinking about her choice. She could have lived among aliens, seen incredible things, but she chose us instead. She didn't just choose us, Jake said. She gave us the universe. By staying behind, by accepting Kellen's gift, she made it possible for all of humanity to learn what the Vari knew. One person's sacrifice opened the stars for billions. The hologram showed the goodbye scene again. Kellen holding Helen with his forearms, his large alien eyes full of sadness. Do you think they survived? Amy asked quietly. The Vari, I mean. Do you think they made it to their new home? I hope so, Jake said. I hope Kellen lived long enough to see his people safe. And I hope he somehow knew that his gift reached the right people. Dr. Lisa Grant called everyone together the next morning. She had been studying the Vari's star maps, comparing them to what humans knew about nearby planets. I found something important, she announced. A star map appeared on the screen. This is where the Vari were going. 50 light-years from Earth in a group of stars we call Lupus. There's a solar system there with 3 planets. The Vari's information says the middle planet was their destination. We've actually studied that system, Chris added, pulling up Earth's astronomy records. We call it Kepler 442. The middle planet is in the habitable zone where liquid water can exist. We've wanted to send probes there for decades, but we never had the technology to travel that far. Until now, Lisa said, smiling. The Sentinel's engines could get us there in 18 months. Everyone went quiet. They all understood what Lisa was suggesting. They could find out what happened to the Vari. They could learn if Kellen was still alive. They could finish what Helen had started 300 years ago. We'd need permission from Earth, Amy pointed out. This would be the longest crewed mission in human history. 18 months just to get there, plus time to explore, plus 18 months to come back. We'd be gone for years. Then we better ask, Jake said, standing up straight. For the first time since boarding the Sentinel, he felt clear about what needed to happen. We need to explain that this isn't just about exploring. It's about keeping a promise that's 300 years old. It's about honoring what Helen did. The message took 3 days to reach Earth. The response took another 3 days. During that time, Jake prepared his crew. He made sure everyone understood that this was voluntary. No one had to go if they didn't want to. Every single person volunteered. When Admiral Peterson's face appeared on the screen, he was smiling. Commander Morrison, the President has authorized your mission. You have permission to travel to the Kepler 442 system. Find out what happened to the Vari. And Jake, if you find them, thank them for us. 6 months later, the Sentinel left Earth orbit with a human crew for the first time. Jake stood on the bridge, the same place where Helen must have recorded her final message 3 centuries ago. All systems working perfectly. Amy reported from the navigation station. We have a crew of 52 volunteers. Supplies for 3 years. Courses set for Kepler 442. The ship is responding beautifully to our commands, Lisa added. It's like it knows we're finally doing what it was meant to do. Jake took a deep breath. Through the window, Earth looked like a blue jewel against the darkness of space. Somewhere down there was a memorial stone with Helen Price's name on it, listing her among the explorers who had died pushing humanity forward. But here, in this ship, she was alive. Her choice, her sacrifice, her hope lived in every system, every computer file, every crystal that stored Vari knowledge. Take us out, Jake ordered. Let's go find our friends. The Sentinel's engines came to life with a sound like music. The ship that had waited for 300 years finally had its purpose back. It was going home, carrying Helen's people to meet Kellen's people. The journey was long, but never boring. Every day the crew discovered something new in the Vari databases. They learned about Vari art and music. They studied Vari science and medicine. They read Vari history and poetry. Jake's favorite discovery was a section of personal logs that Kellen had left in the ship's memory. The alien had recorded his thoughts during the time he spent with Helen. Through the translation software, Jake could read about their growing friendship, their struggles to communicate, and finally their love. One entry made Jake stop and read it 3 times. Helen asked me today why the Vari have the tradition of remembering. I tried to explain that in the vast emptiness of space, connection is the rarest and most precious thing. When 2 beings from different worlds meet and choose kindness over fear, that moment deserves to be remembered forever. She understood immediately. She said humans have a similar idea. They call it love. I think she is right. The remembering is love that transcends time and distance. Another entry was dated the day before the Vari left Earth's solar system. Tomorrow we depart. Helen has chosen to stay with her people. My hearts are breaking, but I understand. She loves humanity the way I love the Vari. That kind of love cannot be selfish. I have programmed the Sentinel to wait for her return, though I know she will likely never come back. But perhaps her children will come, or their children. Perhaps one day a human will board this ship and learn what Helen meant to us. That will be enough. That will be the remembering complete. Jake wiped his eyes. He was crying again. He seemed to cry a lot these days. We're halfway there, Amy announced one morning. 9 months down, 9 months to go. The crew celebrated with a special meal. They had grown close during the journey, bound together by shared purpose. They were more than a crew now. They were pilgrims carrying 300 years of hope toward an uncertain destination. As the Kepler 442 system grew closer, Jake felt both excited and afraid. What if the Vari hadn't survived? What if they arrived to find an empty planet or ancient ruins? What if Kellen had died centuries ago, never knowing that humans had received his gift? But what if they had survived? What if Kellen was still alive, waiting as he had promised? What if they could finally tell him that Helen had never forgotten him? I'm picking up the system now, Chris reported. 3 planets, just like the Vari records indicated. The middle one is reflecting light in a way that suggests water and atmosphere. Any signs of life? Lisa asked, leaning over his shoulder. Too far away to tell yet, but we should know in a few days. The middle planet grew larger in their windows each day. Jake couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about what they might find. The planet looked beautiful from space, covered in blue oceans and green land. Clouds swirled across its surface in patterns that reminded him of Earth. I'm detecting artificial structures, Chris said suddenly, his voice tight with excitement. Buildings on the surface. And Jake, we're receiving a signal. It's repeating the same pattern over and over. Jake's heart pounded in his chest. Can you translate it? Lisa worked quickly at her computer, running the signal through the language database they had studied for months. Her hands shook as she worked. It says welcome, she finally announced, her voice breaking. It says welcome, travelers. Welcome, friends of Helen. Welcome home. The bridge went silent. After 18 months of wondering and hoping, they had their answer. The Vari had survived. They were alive. They were waiting. Send a response, Jake ordered, trying to keep his voice steady. Tell them the remembering is complete. Tell them Helen's people have come. Jake piloted the Sentinel down through the planet's atmosphere himself. He followed coordinates that the Vari had sent them. The world below was breathtaking. Cities made of crystal and light caught the sun and threw rainbows across the land. Forests of plants in colors Jake had never seen swayed in the wind. Oceans sparkled like liquid silver. They landed in a clearing surrounded by beautiful structures. A large crowd had gathered. Hundreds of Vari stood waiting, their skin shimmering in the afternoon sun. They looked just like the beings in Helen's recording, tall and graceful with their 4 arms. At the front of the crowd stood an old Vari. He moved slowly, his posture bent with age. Another Vari walked beside him, helping him stay steady, but Jake could see the markings on the old one's upper arms, faded but still visible. That's him, Jake whispered. That's Kellen. The landing ramp lowered. Jake led his crew down the ramp and onto alien soil. They were the first humans to set foot on another world with intelligent life, but Jake barely thought about the history they were making. He only thought about the promise he had come to keep. Kellen moved forward slowly, leaning on his helper. When he was a few meters away, he stopped. He began to speak in his own language. The translation device Lisa had prepared turned his words into English that came through their earpieces. 317 years, Kellen said, and his voice carried the weight of centuries. 317 years I have waited for this moment. I am old now. I have lived 5 Vari lifetimes. I stayed awake when I could have slept in stasis. I stayed because I promised her I would remember. Jake stepped forward. Then he knelt on one knee, a sign of respect he hoped the Vari would understand. Kellen of the Vari, I am Commander Jake Morrison of Earth. We received your gift. We received Helen's message. She wanted us to tell you something. The old Vari's large eyes focused on Jake with an intensity that took his breath away. She said to tell you that she kept her promise. Jake continued. She said to tell you that humanity was worth your faith. And she said to tell you that she never forgot you. Not for one moment. Kellen's legs seemed to give out. The younger Vari caught him, but Kellen waved away the concern. He was laughing, a sound like wind chimes in summer. Of course she did not forget, Kellen said, his voice breaking with emotion. Helen Price could never forget anything. She had a perfect memory. She argued with me for days about coming with us. She said her people needed her more than we did. I told her she was wrong, but she would not change her mind. The old Vari reached out one hand toward Jake. She was right, of course. She was always right. Look at you. Look at what her people have become. You crossed the space between stars because of her gift. She saved us and guided you. That is the human way, yes? To give everything for those who come after? Jake took Kellen's hand gently. The alien skin felt warm and soft. That's one way humans can be, he said. But we learned from the Vari, too. We learned about the remembering. We learned that kindness between different species is sacred. We learned that love can cross any distance. Over the next weeks, humans and Vari began to truly know each other. The Vari showed them the cities they had built on this new world. They shared their technology, their art, their music. They had created a beautiful civilization that honored both their ancient past and their new beginning. Jake spent many hours with Kellen, learning the complete story of the Vari's journey. The old alien spoke of hardships and victories, of the 73 Vari who had died before reaching this planet, and of the 6,000 who now lived and thrived here. Helen gave us more than technology, Kellen explained one evening. They sat in a garden overlooking the main city. 2 suns were setting, painting the sky in colors Earth never saw. She gave us hope when we had given up. We thought we were the last of our kind, running from death with no future, but she saw us differently. She saw us as explorers starting a new chapter. That changed everything. She saw the best in everyone, Jake said. I can tell that from watching her recordings. When she looked at you, at all the Vari, there was no fear. Just genuine friendship. Kellen's eyes became distant, seeing into the past. I asked her to come with us one final time the night before we left. I told her that I had learned to love her in the way my people love. I told her I would wait for her across all the years if she would only say yes. What did she say? Jake asked softly. She said that she loved me too. Kellen replied, but that her love had to include all her people, as mine included all the Vari. She said the only way she could truly love me was to make sure our peoples could meet again as friends. She said that when that day came, I should know that every human who stood on Vari soil would carry a piece of her heart. Jake felt tears on his face again. You've been waiting 3 centuries to tell someone that. I have been waiting 3 centuries to fulfill my promise. Kellen corrected gently. The remembering is not just memory. It is action. It is keeping faith across time. Today, with your arrival, my remembering is complete. What will you do now? Jake asked. The old Vari smiled. Now I will rest. I will enter the long sleep, knowing that the bridge between our peoples is built. But before I do, I have one more gift to give you. The next day, Kellen led Jake and his officers to a structure at the edge of the city. It looked different from the other buildings, more solemn and sacred. We built this when we first arrived on this world, Kellen explained. It is a memorial for those who brought us here, for those who gave us hope when we needed it most. They entered the building. Inside, in the center of a round room lit by soft light, stood a statue. It showed 2 figures holding each other, a Vari and a human, 4 arms and 2 arms intertwined. The human's face was carved with perfect detail. It was Helen Price, exactly as she looked in the recordings. Her expression showed peace and determination at the same time. Jake stared at the statue for a long time. The Vari had carved it with such care, such love. Every detail was perfect. From the expression on Helen's face to the way her hands rested against Kellen's chest. We have remembered her for 317 years. Kellen said quietly. Every Vari child learns her name. They learn how one human showed us kindness when we were dying. They learned that the stars are not empty, but full of friends we have not met yet. Now I pass this duty to you. Will you remember her? Will you remember us? Will you teach your children that connection matters more than fear? Jake looked at his crew. Amy had tears streaming down her face. Lisa was holding Chris's hand tightly. All of them looked as moved as Jake felt. They had traveled so far on nothing but hope, and they had found something more precious than technology or knowledge. They had found proof that love could survive anything. We will remember, Jake said firmly. We will tell her story to every generation. We will teach our children that humanity's greatest strength is not our technology or our weapons. It's our ability to connect with others, to love across impossible distances, to hope when everything seems lost. Kellen placed one hand on Jake's shoulder. Among the Vari, this was a gesture of blessing and respect. Then the remembering is complete. Our peoples are bound now. Go back to your Earth. Tell them that the Vari remember Helen Price. Tell them that we are not enemies or strangers. We are friends waiting with open arms. Tell them the stars belong to all who come in peace. Before they left, the Vari held a great ceremony. Thousands gathered to see the humans off. They gave gifts of technology, art, and knowledge. But the greatest gift was simpler. Every Vari who could walk came to shake hands with the humans. They wanted to touch the people of Helen's world, to make their own connections, to start their own rememberings. A young Vari child approached Jake shyly. She couldn't have been more than 8 or 9 years old in human terms. She held out a small crystal that glowed softly. "For you," she said through the translation device. "So you remember us too." Jake knelt down and took the crystal gently. "I will never forget," he promised. "None of us will." The journey back to Earth took another 9 months. Jake spent much of that time organizing everything they had learned. They had recordings of thousands of Vari, each one sharing their story. They had new technology that would change human civilization. They had star maps showing hundreds of worlds the Vari had explored. But the most precious cargo was a small data crystal Kellen had given Jake privately, the night before they departed. Inside was every memory the old Vari had of Helen, conversations they had shared, meals they had eaten together, moments of laughter and tears, an entire friendship stored in crystal, waiting to be shared with Helen's people. "We're approaching Earth," Amy announced one morning. "We should be in orbit within 6 hours." Jake stood at the window, watching his home planet grow larger. He thought about all the people down there who didn't know yet what had happened. They didn't know that humanity had friends among the stars. They didn't know that one woman's sacrifice 300 years ago had changed everything. "I'm receiving hundreds of communication requests," Chris said, grinning. "Everyone wants to talk to us. News organizations, governments, scientists. The whole world has been following our mission." "Let them wait a little longer," Jake said. "First, we have somewhere important to go." They landed at a memorial park in Houston, where a simple stone bore Helen Price's name among all the other explorers who had died in space. Jake had insisted on landing there instead of at any official facility. This was where their journey needed to end. The whole crew stood in front of Helen's memorial stone. News cameras from around the world recorded everything, broadcasting it live to billions of people. "Commander Helen Price," Jake began, and his voice carried across the park and across the world. 317 years ago, you made a choice. You chose to stay when you could have left. You chose humanity when you could have chosen wonder and adventure, but in making that choice, you brought the stars to all of us." He knelt and placed Kellen's crystal at the base of the memorial stone. It glowed softly in the afternoon light. "I met your friend Kellen. He waited for you across 3 centuries. He built a memorial for you on a world 50 light years from here. He kept his promise and we've kept yours. Humanity has found the Vari. We've met the friends you made for us. And I want you to know that every person who travels to their world, every child who learns about the Vari, every connection we make among the stars, they will all carry a piece of your heart." Jake stood and faced the cameras. His crew stood behind him in a line, united. "The remembering is complete," he said simply. "Let it begin again." In orbit above Earth, the Sentinel maintained its position, but it was no longer waiting. It was watching, a bridge between 2 worlds, a reminder that one person's choice could change the universe, a testament to the power of love that crosses any distance. The news spread across Earth like wildfire. Within hours, everyone knew about the Vari. They knew about Helen and Kellen. They knew about the gift that had been waiting for 300 years. Children drew new pictures in school, not just of the Sentinel anymore, but of humans and Vari standing together. Scientists began studying the new technology with excitement. Government started planning diplomatic missions to the Vari homeworld, but the change that mattered most was simpler. People looked up at the stars differently now. They were no longer cold and empty. They were full of possibilities, full of friends waiting to be met, full of stories waiting to unfold. Jake received a message a week later. It was from the Vari world, delayed by the vast distance between stars. When he opened it, Kellen's face appeared on the screen. The old Vari looked peaceful. "Jake Morrison," Kellen said. "Thank you for completing the journey. Thank you for keeping faith with Helen's memory. I am entering the long sleep now. I will dream of the day when our people stand together among the stars. Tell your children about us. Tell them about Helen. Tell them that love is the only force in the universe stronger than time or distance. This is my final message. This is my final remembering. Goodbye, friend." The message ended. Jake sat in silence for a long time. The crystal Kellen had given him glowing softly on his desk. He thought about Helen, making her choice in a dying ship 300 years ago. He thought about Kellen, waiting century after century, keeping his promise. He thought about all the humans and Vari who would meet because of their love. Then Jake did something he had been planning since the moment he first watched Helen's recording. He opened a new file and began to write. He would tell the whole story, every detail, every moment. Future generations needed to know what had happened. They needed to understand the power of one person's choice. He titled the document simply, "The Remembering." Outside his window, Earth turned slowly in space. Above it, the Sentinel hung like a guardian, no longer waiting but watching over the world Helen had chosen. And 50 light years away, on a planet humans were already calling New Dawn, the Vari looked up at their own stars and remembered. The bridge between worlds was complete. The story had ended, but really, it had just begun. Years later, the first permanent human embassy was established on New Dawn. The building was constructed next to the memorial where Helen and Kellen's statue stood. Every human who visited the Vari world stopped there first to pay respects to the woman who had made it all possible, and every Vari child still learned Helen's name. They learned about the human who chose her people over the stars, but in doing so, gave both peoples the universe. The remembering continued, as it always would, passed down through generations of humans and Vari who knew that connection was worth any sacrifice, that love could cross any distance, and that hope could survive any length of time. Helen Price had waited 12 hours to die in a damaged ship, using her final moments to record a message of hope. Kellen had waited 317 years, keeping faith across centuries. The Sentinel had waited in silent vigil, a promise made real in metal and crystal, and now finally the waiting was over. The promise was kept. The remembering was complete, but its echo would ring across the stars forever.